Welcome to our program. I'm Don Pritchard, and joining me in the studio we have Randy McWilson. He's the author of the Back to Normal quadrilogy. And the latest novel in the quadrilogy is Paradigm Rift. And Randy, welcome to our program.
Hey, really good to be here, Don. Looking forward to the show.
Tell me about Back to Normal. That's a series of books you've written, 4 books, a quadrilogy, and I said that twice now without messing it up.
You're doing fantastic, fantastic. Back to Normal is, I always tell people, it's conspiracy, it's history, and it's a thriller all rolled up into one. And so it's a book about time travel, and it centers around a group of roughly about a dozen people that have found themselves in America thrown back to the town of Normal, Illinois, which is a real town. Bloomington Normal, a lot of people have heard of Bloomington Normal. They found themselves thrown back to the mid-50s in the town of Normal, Illinois, and they are all from different decades. You have some people are from the 60s, some are from the 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way to our time, and they found themselves thrown back together, and they're desperately trying to figure out how to get back to when they came from, but they're trying to act like they are just out-of-towners that have moved into town. But what they don't realize is that they're being hunted by the CIA, and the KGB has actually sent a KGB assassin to America because the Russians have learned that the CIA has learned that there's a group of people from the future living among us, and what that would be worth to the intelligence community to get access to that kind of information.
Yes, you bet. So these individuals are wanted.
They are wanted people, and they don't even realize till a good chunk of the way through book 1, they don't Paradigm Rift, they don't really realize that they're being hunted down. They think that they're staying below the radar. But there is a wallet that gets dropped on a bus on a trip to Chicago that begins a cascade of events. And and then also the book actually backs up to the 40s as well, because you may have heard of the famous Roswell incident or the famous Roswell event. Well, you're going to find out in my book series that was actually related to time travel. Sorry, folks, not Little Green Men, but it is about people conducting time travel experimentation.
Okay, so I misspoke earlier. I said Paradigm Rift is the latest.
That is the first book in the series, yes.
And then you have Tradecraft, Proximity, and then Crossover.
And then Crossover
is the final.
Yeah, now, it literally came out a month ago.
Is that the last one in the series?
Are you looking for spoilers?
Yes.
Everybody wants to know, does it end? I will say this, because you're a good friend that I just met. I will say that it does end. All of the important story arcs that begin in Paradigm Rift are neatly tidied up at the end in a nice little bow. They are tied off very nicely, but the door is left open for a second series in also a very nice and neat way. Here's what I tell people. I leave the door open for a sequel series, but the crack that I leave in the door doesn't demand a second series. And so it's not going to infuriate people that, he's not, I am working on a second series. I'm in the outline phase right now.
How much of crossover did you know was going to happen when you started Paradigm Rift?
That is a fabulous question. I had pretty well the whole story lined out in my mind even before I began the first book, generally speaking. Of course, characters evolve, story arcs evolve. You get new subplots that kind of come into play as things work in the story. But I would say probably 80% of the story remained intact at the end that I began with several years ago in starting this process.
Okay. Day one, writing Paradigm Rift. What was the genesis of the thought that led to Paradigm Rift and to the Back to Normal series?
Well, that actually goes back to 2011. I was in a vehicle driving to the Boot Heel to shoot. I'm a video producer, and I was shooting a video for a doctor friend. We were doing a preoperative patient interview with one of his patients, and I had hired a friend of mine to help me set up lighting and to be an assistant on the shoot. And we had a few hours of driving down, a few hours driving back, and I had just finished writing a feature-length film script, and we were talking about that, and my friend said, you really enjoy writing? I said, yeah. And he said, I had a dream the other day that I think would make a good idea for a movie. And I was like, let's hear about it. We got time while we're driving. He said, well, in my dream there was a guy from our time, and he fell asleep, and he woke up like in the seedy motel, and he didn't know what had happened, and he left the motel, and the first person he ran into was a cop. And so we were, started talking about this, and I said, okay. I said, it's very interesting. I said, so basically your dream was about time travel, and you've kind of given us a period of time, the 40s or the 50s. I think he actually said the late 40s. And I said it's a very interesting period in U.S. history, and And so I said, well, let's develop this. So I said, I'll let you in on my creative process as a writer, what I do. So I just started talking through it. And so we kept going. And I said, you know, what'd be interesting is, what if the cop that he met was also a time traveler? Ooh, well, there's something to chew on for a little bit. And so then it was like, and what if the reason that he met this cop is because the cop was looking for him, because the cop knew there was another time jumper. So there has to be some kind of sign or event that occurs that lets people know that someone has jumped through time. And if that's true, then maybe there's been a whole group of time jumpers. Maybe the cop is one of many. And so we're doing all this while we're driving down the road. And then we get there and we do the shoot. And then on the way back, we keep developing the story. That's when Normal, Illinois came into the picture.
You happen to see a sign saying Normal, Illinois?
No, we were in the boot deal. And it came out of the conversation.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
and so we developed this whole concept of what if there was a group of people living in America at the beginning of the Cold War who were from the future, and they were desperately trying to find out how to get back to when they came from, but they're being hunted by the CIA, they're being hunted by the KGB, and what if we tied their stories into actual historical events in U.S. history that we could tie to their existence as a better way of explaining. Now, this is where Roswell comes in. Mm-hmm. Because what you find out when you read the story is that the time jumping first began in 1946. Now this book, Paradigm Rift, it begins in 1956. But the first jumper jumped to normal in 1946.
Okay,
well, he's gone by the time of this first book. We follow a character by the name of Denver Wayne Collins. Well, the first jumper, Phil Nelson, is gone by the time Denver arrives. So the way as an author that I give you that backstory is I give you sneak peeks into a diary, a journal that Phil kept right after he jumped. He started maintaining a detailed diary of his experiences. And so what you find is that people started jumping in 46, and after Phil jumped, a few more started jumping, and they started doing time travel experimentation, and they eventually ended up in Roswell. Because, as you look at the covers, every one of the books all have a lightning bolt on the cover. And so what I explain in the book series in a pseudoscientific foundation is that what allows people to travel through time is the tremendous amount of energy in lightning interacting with rips in the space-time continuum caused by nuclear testing in the 40s. And this is why there were no time jumps until 1946, because that's when we really got serious into nuclear testing, into thermonuclear testing. Okay. And that's in the book series I explained, that's what ripped the space-time continuum, which then started allowing people to travel through time.
Very good. Okay, let's talk about
and that was a really long answer.
The title of your series is Back to Normal.
Yes.
And there are I think you said at least three or four.
At least 3 or 4.
Connotations to Back to Normal.
Obviously the most, obvious one is they have all jumped back in time to the town of Normal, Illinois, right? So that's the ostentatious, most obvious. But the second thing is all of them are trying to find a way to get back home, to get back to their own normal, which for Denver is our time. And so they're trying to get back to their normal, but then while they're living in the 50s, they have to learn how to adjust to life in the 50s. In other words, imagine you and I right now, all of a sudden, lightning, flash, we're in 1956. Well, if we start mentioning anything about current American politics, music, entertainment, movies, geopolitical events.
Sure.
September 11th,
yeah, exactly.
Al-Qaeda is out of context completely. And if we mention a song by Elvis was big in 1956, but some of his biggest hits are yet future. And so all of a sudden we would be odd ducks, and people, and then your money that's in your wallet, the dates that are on it, even though the money may look similar, the dates are incorrect. And so color photo, driver's licenses, on and on and on.
Exactly.
And so they actually, the group of jumpers, every time a new jumper arrives, they have to go through what's called TOC. And those are temporal orientation classes. And they have to learn how to talk like the 50s, how to, what movies, what jargon to use, what are the slang phrases that are used, daddy-o. And, a cute girl was a dolly, and a married person was circled. Hey, she's circled, don't mess with her. Circled, she has a ring. All these phrases that are foreign to us today, burn rubber, lay a patch. All of these phrases from the 50s that we don't use anymore. You have to start to learn how to use that lingo.
So they had to go to a school.
Literally, there's a school,
Classroom.
there's a classroom that they actually have. And in the story, they have a factory that the jumpers built. And in the factory, because it gives all the jumpers a place to go to work
Sure.
every day, but really they're working on time travel in the basement. But they actually have a little factory. It's a window factory. And so in the back of the window factory is a little classroom, and all the new jumpers have to go to class there and learn how to interact with that era. And so
Exactly.
they trigger a lot of world events. And like I said, the Roswell incident is owed to the time jumpers in the series. Area 51 was built because of them.
Ah,
The U-2 spy plane and the SR-71 program all hinged upon them. And so it will even possibly go on to the Bay of Pigs. Why did we lose at the invasion of the Bay of Pigs? Why did the CIA lose? Well, there's a story arc that I may develop further in the future that it has to do with time travel, that the Russians and the Cubans knew we were coming because of time travel and were prepared to defeat the forces backed by the CIA in the Bay of Pigs. The nuclear missile crisis, all is about time travel, was not about nuclear war. You're going to find out that that was actually about that. Here's what I tell people. In my series, us and the Russians were trying to make it look like that we were having a nuclear arms race or that we were having a space race. But literally, it was a time race. And the nuclear program and the space programs were ways of covering up our research into time travel, because whoever achieves that first will rule the world. And so this thing is huge. The Kennedy assassination possibly will come into play in a coming series.
okay.
So yeah,
Wow.
it's huge.
It's a lot
It's-
to absorb. Okay, let's
It's a reinterpretation of U.S. history. That what if it was about time travel?
Yeah. Let's go back and start talking about the practical aspects of you producing this series. I understand the books actually came out because you started marketing
Yes. TV series.
a TV series idea.
Absolutely. When I first came up with Back to Normal, I wrote 3 scripts, a pilot script and 2 one-hour scripts for a TV series. And what I tell people, it's like Back to the Future meets Lost. So if people that like the TV show Lost, what they like is they like the very interesting characters that had very interesting backstories. Lost was about a group of people that were forced to be together as friends for survival, but in the real world, none of them would have been friends. And that's what I've done in this series. I put together about 12 people that never would have been friends in the real world. And then they're like a zoo exhibit that we look through the glass and get to watch them squirm as they try to figure out how to adjust to life and each other. And so I wrote this as a TV show at first, and then I started pitching it to people in Hollywood, executives. And the thing that I kept hearing was, man, this is a fabulous story idea. Why haven't you written the book series yet? They're like, because you obviously can write because you wrote these scripts. And after about the 3rd time in Hollywood that I heard somebody say, why haven't you written the book series yet? I was like, Lord, are you trying to tell me that I'm supposed to write this as a book series? So in February of 2014, I began writing Paradigm Rift. I finished it in August, so about 6 months later, and in October, the first book came out 2014. And I've averaged releasing a new book about every 5 months ever since.
Wow.
And so the final book literally came out a month ago.
How do you fit that in? Because in real life,
I'm a teacher. I teach digital media.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you teach digital media.
I'm a video producer as well. I do work for Procter & Gamble. I do work for a lot of area businesses. But I usually write every day, anywhere. Sometimes I'll start about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, write till 1 or 2 in the morning on weekdays, and then get up at 7 and go back to work. And then on the weekends, I'll write anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a day.
So this is your recreation?
I actually would rather write than just about anything else. I love writing. It's a way I relax. You get to explore worlds and characters and personalities, and it's the ultimate. People talk about putting on VR goggles and having virtual reality. This is true virtual reality because you can create anything, and so it's very, very gratifying.
We've talked earlier about when we read a book, we picture a mental image. We have a mental image of what the characters look like, what they're seeing through our eyes, and through our mental eyes.
Yes.
And so when we go to a movie adaptation of that book, sometimes we can be pretty critical.
Yes.
Because it doesn't meet our expectations.
Yeah, that old city doesn't look right, or that spaceship doesn't look right.
Exactly. And it's impossible to think a producer can actually get inside my head. Though occasionally I understand they do click.
Yes.
And people will see a movie, wow, that's exact. They nailed it.
Yeah, I would say that was true of me. One of my favorite series when I was a kid growing up was the Narnia series, C.S. Lewis. Big C.S. Lewis fan. And when I was very worried when they were going to release Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because it's such a beloved book series, how are they ever going to get Narnia and the castles and Aslan and the White Witch and all that to look exactly like you pictured it? And I will say it's about 98% the way I saw it, and I was very, very pleased. And so, my goal is, since I was unsuccessful at the time of getting anyone to purchase this as a TV series. Now, I do have a manager in Hollywood. His name is Tom Clausen. By the way, he is Al Pacino's former manager. He found my writings through another guy, and he said, Randy, called me on the phone. He was so excited when he called me. He said, in my years in Hollywood, he's been 50 years. He goes, I've read thousands of scripts. He said, I think that this is 1 in a million of an idea that you have here. And he's so excited about the concept. We've been unsuccessful in selling it as of yet, but my goal is, now that the book series is out and is doing very well, people really love it. Right now on Amazon, the whole series as an aggregate is sitting at 4.7 stars out of 5. The second, third, and fourth book are each at almost a perfect 5-star. I think they have all 4 and 5-star ratings, period. On the last book has all 5-star except 1 4-star. And so people are really connecting with this series. And so my goal is that this series will really generate an audience. It will find its own audience. It will find a niche group of people that really love it. And then that will make it easier to then sell that audience to Hollywood and say, now we need to make this into a television show. I think it would be a terrible movie idea, but I think it would be a great television series, because it's all about the daily struggles of this group of people as they're trying to. Here's what I tell people. It's like Gilligan's Island. Yeah. Gilligan's Island would have made a terrible movie, but it makes a great TV show because it's about the daily struggles of this group of people that are trying to get off the island, and they almost get off the island, and then something always goes wrong, right? Yeah. Well, this, in my book series, they almost get it figured out, and there'll be a big setback, and then they'll almost get it figured out, then there'll be a setback or a death in the group, or the government will step in. And so it's like Gilligan's Island without the comedy, but the island is time, and they're trapped in time, but there's all this amazing interplay between these interesting characters. And then the question is, will they ever cross over?
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you've had some success in Hollywood in getting some of your productions, we might say, mini productions.
That's a really good way to put it.
That you have produced some footage that they've used in movies like Sharknado and...
Oh, man. Did you just say Sharknado?
Sharknado, yes, folks.
We need to almost echo that. Sharknado, NATO.
Yeah, put the reverb on.
I love that. Make sure you use a tube. Those sound much better. But I actually am a stock media producer. And a stock media producer is someone who produces either photography, music, or video sequences that other people will buy to make other projects with. So for instance, let's say you're making a commercial, and in that commercial you need a shot of a little girl walking through a field of flowers in slow motion into the sun. Well, a lot of times you won't actually go shoot that. You'll go online, and there are stock agencies like Pond5, Shutterstock, and they sell that kind of footage. So you would type in little girl flowers slow motion, and they might have 500 shots like that, and then you might pay $20, you might pay $200, but you might get exactly what you want and not have to worry about casting the girl, finding the location, waiting for the weather to be just right. And there are literally companies that do nothing but produce TV commercials day in and day out without shooting a single frame of footage. They could do a pharmaceutical commercial, they could do a commercial for shoes, whatever, and they just buy stock footage and then just cut a voiceover, add the music and the graphics, and you're done. And I've had a lot of my footage bought by companies that produce films. The biggest ever has been Total Recall with Colin Farrell that came out a few years ago. I mean, he's an A-list actor, and they actually bought a clip of mine that made it in the film. Sharknado bought a clip of mine of a tornado, and that was shown 5 different times, the same clip in Sharknado. And a lot of, it's not uncommon. I'll be watching Netflix with my family, and we'll be watching some B-quality movie that never made it to the theater, and all of a sudden I'll go, that's one of my shots, and a little while later, that's one of my shots.
Do you check to make sure they paid for that?
Well, there's no real way to know, because whenever you sell stock, they don't tell you who the buyers are. You just get a check. They just tell you sold this clip 3 times this week, and then you get a check. But now, when the clip that made it into Total Recall, because that was a big Hollywood film, they actually followed up with me to make sure that, because it was an animation that I had made of an astronaut, they made sure that I had the rights for every single element in that shot, that I had the rights to use that, because it's very legal That whole industry is, people are loving to sue Hollywood, and so they want to make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted. So stock media is another way that I generate an income.
And I understand this is not your only set of 4 that you've done.
Well, this is the only book series that I've completed,
Okay.
but I'm working on 2 more series right now. I'm working actually on a series about dragons, a trilogy. No, this is more not a quadrilogy. It may be a quadrilogy before it's all said and done, but as of right now, it's a trilogy, and that is called, at least the working title right now, is the Arlon Prophecies. First book is called The Dragon Offering. Second book is The Dragon Relics. Third book is called The Dragon King, and that one's a little bit more of a Tolkien kind of a feel. There's not going to be elves and dwarves and all this kind of thing. It's humans, but there will be dragons involved. It's a kind of a coming-of-age story, going to be very good. It's a quest kind of a series. And then I'm also working on Series 2, Back to Normal, and the working title of Series 2 is The Iron Protocol.
Okay. Let's talk about if someone has ideas for books. And every one of us has a book in us, they say.
Yes.
There's always some that we've been thinking.
My mom always said I was full of it, so maybe that's what she was
Maybe that's
referring
it.
to.
What's the process? How did you go about marketing these things and getting them out to the public?
That's a fabulous question. Back in the days when you and I were kids growing up in the dark ages, if someone wanted to be a writer, first off, you had to send off a manuscript to a bunch of publishers. You tried to find a literary agent first, which was almost impossible. Then they would try to sell it to a publisher, which was 1 in a million. And then they might buy it, but then sit on it, never do anything with it, or they might publish it, and then they would have to print, storerooms full of copies of the books in order to then release it to bookstores and all that. That's all gone. Those days are gone forever. Now, the average person can publish their own books. You no longer need a literary agent. You no longer need a publishing company because Amazon will be your publishing company for you. You literally can send them your Word file, upload it to them. They have people that will check it to make sure that the file, not that it's good writing, but that the file is consistent with their standards. You upload them the cover, the back cover, all that, and then they literally, within 24 hours, that book can go online, and you could order within 24 hours, and that book will be in your hands by the next day.
And you were telling me that they print on demand.
POD.
They will not print a book until someone buys it.
Until someone buys it. Now, unless it's a really, really big book that they know they're going to sell, that way they don't have delays. But when someone orders my book, since I'm not a huge author, literally they get that order, a machine within seconds prints that whole book, boxes it, ships out the door. As far as I understand, it never touches human hands. You can order a book up until about 6 o'clock tonight and have it tomorrow.
Now let me
It's
say,
amazing.
I'm reading Paradigm Rift, and you've got a misspelled word on page 300.
Do
And
I?
I don't know that yet. I may. Maybe I saw into the future.
Ooh.
But let's say I
Yes.
see something wrong. I see a
Yep,
boo-boo. I
yep,
see a
yep.
bet.
So he opens
and
to page
I've been reading-
300. Yep.
Now, do you have 300?
So let's go to 300. There we go. There,
Okay.
yeah.
But anyway, at any rate, I find a mistake, and I go, Randy, look at this. You spelled that wrong.
Okay, so what I do is I would literally, and I've had people catch mistakes. By the way, this is not uncommon. Even some of the biggest authors, George
Sure.
R. R. Martin, people that sell millions of books, you will find mistakes in their books. And so I've had people send me a message, hey, page so-and-so, you used the word, where, W-E-A-R, but it was supposed to be W-H-E-R-E in context. Well, my editors missed that because the word is accurate, but it just wasn't the right word for the sentence. And when you're reading, your brain fixes a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And so they'll catch that. I had somebody catch. So I can literally go into my computer, update the Word file, upload that to Amazon, and within a few hours, all the books printed from that moment on with the fixed file. Literally almost the same day.
Wow.
It's incredible. Or I can
Yeah.
change the cover and
Change
start
the
releasing a new cover. So all books that are ordered from today on will get the new
So
book.
if, for example, you get into the top 100, get a bestseller on New York Times,
And I want to put that on
and
the
you want to
cover.
put it on the cover, you can just
New
slap
York
it on
Times
there.
bestseller,
Yeah.
and by tomorrow, everybody ordering gets the new cover.
That's outstanding.
It really, it's.
That's outstanding.
I would like people to know how liberating this is. Now, let me. Okay, you know what they say about YouTube. You know what they say is the best and the worst thing about YouTube.
Well,
They say the best thing about YouTube is that anybody can put videos up there. You know what the worst thing about YouTube is?
Anybody.
And anybody can put videos on YouTube. Now, here's the thing about self-publishing. The problem is, since anyone can publish a book, it doesn't have to be a thick book. You could publish a 10-page book, a 20-page book. You still want to make sure that it is a quality book. So you need to hire editors and proofers. And please do not write a book, have your friends read it and tell you how great it is, and then immediately upload it to Amazon. By the way, they don't go to Amazon directly. You go to their website. It's called Create Space, one word, Create Space, CREATE-SPACE. You sign up. It's totally free. And then you start the process. They'll tell you upload your file, upload your cover, and they will have links if you want them to find you an editor or a cover designer for a certain fee, and you know those fees up front, and they will help you. Please get a good editor or even a few editors. I have 3 different ladies that I have work on my projects for me. A content editor, a line-by-line editor, and another lady that goes word by word, letter by letter, and looks at every letter. And then one helps me find flaws in my story. The other helps me find flaws in my wording of my sentences, and the other helps me find flaws in everything from commas, periods, semicolons. And you pay these people, but they're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. Well, I've heard it said that when you start writing something this lengthy, it's hard to remember back here what some of the characters said back here.
Oh boy.
And you to keep the story straight, you've got to.
Yeah, I do. My prep work. I actually wrote about 200 pages of material before I wrote the first book. Backstories of all the characters and how it was all going to play out,
Right.
and outlines for the books, and I kept it all in a big Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And so I had like story arcs, where they would begin, where they would end. Here's a conflict that begins here, it's going to end right here, to keep myself straight because it's such a huge story. The book starts in August of 1956 in the first book, and in the last book it ends on Christmas Day 1956. But it jumps all the way back to 1946 at times. It also jumps back to the 1930s. The second book, Tradecraft, actually takes you into Russia in the 30s, because you start to follow the development of the Russian assassin that is sent to hunt down the group of jumpers. You learn about her childhood and how she was groomed for this moment. And her name is Darkstar, Oksana in the story. She is I have people tell me when they finish the whole story, they say the main bad guy, which is a female, Oksana or Darkstar, she is their favorite character throughout the whole series. But you don't really get introduced to her big time until book 2. But then she's a major character from book 2 till the end. So,
Okay, very good.
yeah, but I just want to encourage people. A lot of people, like you said, have really good ideas, whatever. But please, write out your ideas. Get feedback from people who don't know you. What I did was I took my book when I finished my first draft. I sent it out to dozens of people, a lot of whom I didn't even know. And I said, I want honest feedback. And boy, let me tell you, when you ask for honest feedback, you're going to get it. And you tell them, look, don't spare my feelings.
Right.
Because if something needs to change, it needs to change. You're not going to be successful if, well, Grandma liked it, my mom really liked it, my best friend really liked it. Well, they're sparing your feelings.
Yes.
And then hire you an editor and hopefully and a proofer, at least an editor and a proofer.
Yeah.
And then and they're worth their weight in gold. And you go online and you can find proofing and editing services cheaper than you might think.
Okay. One of the things about our technology and the state of our society today is we're visual media. We are visual people.
Absolutely.
We want to see
I can
it.
see that.
Yeah. We want to be able to see it up front. And so now I understand from what you've told me, it's common practice as a book writer, author, to produce a video trailer for your book.
This is the newest trend. It's been out the last few years, where people actually produce a trailer, like a movie trailer, so that people can visualize what a book series is about. Just like when you see a movie trailer on TV and you say, I didn't know they were making that movie. Oh, I got to go see that. Well, now it's like, there's a book about that topic. That's what it's like. Boom. And you're exactly right. You're feeding the visual aspect of our culture.
And on your website, you had a trailer for, was it the first book?
The first book, yes,
You have a
Paradigm
trailer
Rift.
for Paradigm Rift.
Yep.
We have that available right now, and if Charles can bring that up, we'll watch the video. There it is.
2, 1, 0.
Like the rest of us, you're a time jumper, Mr. Collins. 1 second our lives were normal, and then a flash of lightning. The next second, well, that's when things get real interesting.
Don't make me shoot you, boy! Welcome to 1956.
Listen to me. We're gonna get home. All of us.
Fascinating. That was wonderful.
Well, it's the newest trend. Make a trailer, allow people to visualize, and you really, you get to feel, in the trailer, you get to, if you study carefully, you'll see a lot of the scenes, the clothing was all period pieces. We actually had to go get period clothing from antique stores, the props that were even used. And there was, the policeman that you saw at the beginning that shoots Denver Collins as he's running away with the tranquilizer. Actually, if you look at it very closely, you'll see his police coat actually has a patch, normal police department, real patch. His name is Federal Brooks. Actually, really, with attention to detail, we put a lot of attention to detail in this trailer. And there's a few things that don't follow the book, like he doesn't wake up in a field. In this one, he's looking at a picture of his daughter, and then all of a sudden he's in a field. Well, in the story, he woke up in a motel, but it was pitch black, and so you can't have him jump into a pitch black room because you wouldn't be able to see what was going on. And so we fudged a little bit there, but it's pretty true to the book. The rest
Fascinating, fascinating. And really, it makes you want to go out and get the book.
Yep, and we hope people do.
At least wait for the series to come.
Yeah, and this, yeah. And I tell people, look, read the book series, leave reviews on Amazon. Here's something else that's interesting that a lot of people don't know. You can leave a review for anything on Amazon, even if you didn't buy it there. As long as you've bought at least one item in the past 10 years on Amazon, you can leave a review for anything on Amazon, even if you only spent $1. Because I've talked to some people, it's like, do you enjoy the book series? Oh, I loved it. I said, well, I haven't seen your review online. Oh, well, I didn't buy it on Amazon. I'm like, oh, no, you understand. You can leave a review on Amazon as long as you're a member of Amazon. And so please go on Amazon and leave reviews. And then if we get enough good reviews, then when we go to pitch this again to Hollywood and say, look at this built-in fan base we already have. Look at The Martian.
Yes.
The Martian recently. This proves that this can really happen. Andy Weir, who wrote that, had never written a book before. He wrote this book, put it for free on Amazon as a free download, got marginal interest in it, thought, well, then he upped the price to 99 cents. Well, then it started to sell. Instead of free, I guess it was perceived as good for nothing. Well, then he put it at 99 cents and people started buying it. And then a book reviewer bought it for 99 cents, did a favorable review on a book review website, and then all of a sudden his hits on it started skyrocketing. And before you know it, somebody in Hollywood got a hold of the story and said this would make a really great movie.
Right.
And then now we have this huge movie with Matt Damon that is going to
Exactly.
So, and he's never written another book since then. Not even written
That's
another
a
book.
perfect example of something I learned back in marketing class. You can set a price too low.
Yes, and it gets perceived as
inferior.
inferior.
Cheap, inferior. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect example of that.
Yeah,
That's
and
wonderful.
who is to say, was that really the reason? But I've read an article about Andy Weir and about The Martian, and they said, that he had minimal success while it was free, and then once he priced it, then it started going up, and then it was discovered.
So that's evidence of that. Now you've become somewhat of a celebrity in your town.
Well, on my street.
On your street,
I'm extremely well known on my street.
Let's talk about Comic-Con.
Yes.
The Cape Comic-Con was held not too long ago.
Yeah, it was the middle of April.
Yeah.
And it was my second year at the Comic-Con. Now, last year I was there. I only had the first book out. Now, think about that. A year ago, only book 1 was out.
Wow.
Because book 2, Tradecraft, literally hit the shelves 3 weeks after Comic-Con last year. I just couldn't get it done fast enough. And so the first book came out, huge success. People went crazy, sold tons of books at that first Comic-Con. And then This, a year later, exactly a year later, the whole rest of the series is done. All 4 books. People came by, they were blown away. They said, wait a minute, you just had 1 book last year. I said, I got the rest of the series done. And I had so many people stop by and say, Randy, I'm going to tell you right now, I got your book last year at the Comic-Con. I was skeptical. One guy said, it's my favorite book I've ever read in my life, was your first book. I said, wait till you read the rest of this series. And they were literally, there were times they were lined up at my table. People lined up and bought the whole set.
That's
whole
a celebrity.
set.
That's what I said.
Whole set.
He's a celebrity now.
Well, KFES did a little story about me as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
That really helped push things along. They came to Comic-Con this year, did a little story about my book series. And I mean, seriously, I just couldn't believe it. I literally sold out of books. I mean, people were buying complete sets at a time. And hey, that's not a problem when you run out of books.
No.
That's a good thing.
So
Never had
you
that
actually
happen.
had Amazon print some for you.
Well, yeah. So when you do
out.
that, so what you have to do when you're self-published is, if I go to a book signing, I order the books ahead of time from Amazon. I have a special way that I order them where I get them cheaper than, because I'm the author, and then I take and then I resell them to the public. And so you sell them to the public. So you sometimes it's a gamble. You never know how many you're going to sell, so you might end up sitting with a ton of books. But then you just do a few more book signings, and you'll clear your inventory.
Yeah. How important is it to have an event like the Cape Comic-Con come to a medium-sized, even a small city? Most people would say a small city. Living here in St. Genevieve, we consider it a big city, but well, whatever.
Yeah.
How important is it for that kind of an event for people like you who are authors and people who are into all the different aspects that you see at Comic-Con?
Cape Comic-Con is huge for our area. I mean, there are local artists, there are local writers that come to those events. I get to meet so many other local writers that are from the heartland that are there and have written many, many books. People I've never even heard of. Of course, a lot of the genres I'm not into horror and zombie style books and things like that. But I was amazed to see how many local writers and artists there are. And these kind of events really give us an outlet to meet the public. And since I did this Cape Comic-Con this last year, I was approached by probably no less than half a dozen organizers of other big events as far away as like let's say Little Rock, and that were there at the Cape Comic-Con and said, we would like to have you as a vendor at our show. And they were seeing the traffic that I was getting. They were seeing, and people were like, would you please consider coming and selling books and doing signings at our show? And so I've been in negotiations and talking to several of them about that. So my plan is to try to broaden my horizons a little bit. There also are science fiction book shows that you can go to, science fiction conventions that I'll probably be visiting. There's one in St. Louis in the fall that I'll probably be signing at. Now that I've got a complete series, it gives you a lot of what we call street cred.
Sure.
You got that credibility now,
Yes.
because a lot of people are afraid to try out a new writer because they don't know if you're going to finish. But now that I finished the whole series, they're like, you know what, I'm willing to take a chance because you've shown that you can complete a book series, and on Amazon, with a 4.7 out of 5 stars. And that's not just, my next door neighbors. I mean, we're talking, there are hundreds of reviews on there. And when you sit at 4.7 stars, people say, okay, there's something that's connecting with a lot of people here. And I'm also on Goodreads, which is another website for readers to go to find books, and goodreads.com. And I have a very favorable rating on Goodreads as well. And I'm just tickled to death that people love this series. I had a lady the other day sent me a message, said her husband just finished reading the whole series, and she said, he wanted me to tell you that your 4th book in the series was the single best book he's read in his entire life. And he reads book series constantly. I had a guy stop me on 2 Sundays ago, and he stopped me because I was over in Marble Hill at a church to see my mother. And the guy stopped me and he goes, I want to tell you, I just finished your book series, and it may be the best book series I've ever read in my entire life.
Very good.
He's like, when are you going to write anything else? We love, I always say this, cooks love eaters, writers love readers,
You bet.
And when we see people are enjoying the things that we are cooking up, that we are creating, and they're getting such satisfaction. The problem with a meal is you eat a meal and it's gone except for the memory. But a book, you can go back and reread it months or years later. I've reread the Narnia series probably 15 times.
Oh, yes.
Even
yes.
as an adult.
Yes. I read Sherlock Holmes over and over again.
Or Hardy Boys mysteries.
Yeah, Hardy Boys.
Arthur C. Clarke.
I even
Rendezvous
read
with Rama.
Nancy Drew.
Well, I never got into Nancy Drew, but love the Hardy Boys.
Yes.
Love C.S. Lewis, love Arthur C. Clarke,
Well,
love Douglas Adams.
I had a 5th grade teacher who would, if we were good, she would read a chapter at the end of the day to us from Nancy Drew. And if you remember, the same thing with the Hardy Boys. They were all written by a pseudonym. But anyway, I don't remember who it was,
Yeah,
who was
yeah.
the original. But anyway, all their chapters end in a cliffhanger.
That's the way mine.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys and some of the others did that. And so,
Yep.
so she
And
got us-
every book ends on a cliffhanger.
and
Except
she
for
knew that we would be good the next week because we would want to
the
hear what
cliffhanger.
happened. So
Yes.
it's kind of, well, Randy, what a pleasure to meet you today.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope people find something in the series that they love. I had a lady tell me that she was from Normal, and when she read the series, she goes, because I researched Normal and I spent time there in Normal, actually researching the community. She says, you are so accurate describing the community that it brought me back to my childhood.
Wow, that's great. Well, good luck to you. The book series is called Back to Normal. Paradigm Rift is the first one, Tradecraft, Proximity, and then Crossover.
Yes.
Back to Normal series. Author Randy McWilson from Jackson, Missouri.
Jackson, Missouri, originally from California, but moved to Jackson.
And I was originally from California and moved to St. Genevieve.
What do you know?
Strange phenomenons. That's our interview. That's our conversation with Randy McWilson. Thank you for watching.